Hello, I'm Sarah Goodall and I'm the CEO of Tribal Impact. Recently, we held our annual community event in London where we looked at the business impact of trust and why activating executives, sales teams, and employees on social media is a good way to build that trust and how you measure the impact. So, I'm going to run through my presentation, which I delivered at the start of the day, which talks a little bit about setting the scene and why trust is so important. And I'm going to break this down into a series of mini videos. So, first up, who is Tribal and who are we not? So, we don't build tools. We're not a SaaS vendor. We build trust. So, we're the people that organizations call when they've bought lots of tools like Employee Advocacy and Sales Navigator, and still nothing has changed. Because what you've got to do is build behavior change within your organization. So, we come in, we take a look at the data, see what's working, what's not, and then we build a plan about how you activate your executives, employees, and sales teams to build that trust on social media. And then we have the training and services to support that plan and get it executed as you go. So that's what we do. And we host the event every year, and we bring practitioners and thought leaders and influencers from around the world to share their expertise and how they do things on social media. So it's a great place for us to learn and for our customers to learn from each other. And this is why we do it every year. So, the main impact of this presentation is all about setting the scene around trust. And trust isn't a nice to have, it's an actual growth strategy. So, PwC did a survey and they found that 93% of executives agree that their ability to earn and maintain trust has a direct impact on the bottom line. And Great Place to Work have found that employees in high trust workplaces generate on average 8.5 times more revenue per head than low trust workplaces. But what we also know is the direct impact on the bottom line. 84% of buyers will choose vendors that they've worked before with. And not only that, they'll spend more with them, with 6 in 10 customers spending more on the purchases from brands that they're already loyal to. So, just to set the scene, trust is a huge driver for business growth and has a direct impact on the bottom line. And no one feels this more than your sales teams. And they're at the front line and they're feeling this the hardest. And the sort of things that they're looking at, well, basically, there's too many people involved in the buying process now. On average, they reckon there's 6 to 10 people. Some studies reckon it might be more, but Gartner thinks it's about 6 to 10 people. And on average, according to Salesforce, they're consuming anywhere between 10 and 15 pieces of content. And what this means, according to Sixth Sense, is that the sales cycle has got longer, on average to 11 and a half months. This is really hard for your sales teams. They have to contact more people, try and touch them multiple times. And that inevitably is lengthening the sales cycle, which causes a problem too, especially when they're targeted on a quarterly basis. But not only that, there's a new demographic of buyer in town, and 73% of B2B opportunities are now influenced by millennials. And these millennials, they are looking to trust-based pieces of content like referrals, testimonials, case studies, reviews, and they are looking at those pieces of content the most. And so this is where trust becomes even more important, especially when they're influencing buying processes. And this same demographic of buyer doesn't want to sit in front of a salesperson. 68% of them prefer a self-service experience. And more than that, they're trusting AI more. So most of them are seeing that AI box appear on their Google window that is summarizing what they are looking for. And actually, they're not even clicking onto the second page in Google search engines. And some of them are even using tools like Perplexity, ChatGPT, Gemini. They're looking at those tools and finding vendors that way. More importantly, 34% of that demographic of buyer are actually shortlisting their vendor list using those tools. Now, Jen Shawsweet from LinkedIn B2B Institute came to our event last year and she put these 3 statistics in front of us. She basically said 86% of B2B buyers will start with a day one list. And on that day one list will be anywhere between 3 and 5 vendors. And 92% of those buyers will go on to buy from one of those vendors that were on the day one list. So essentially, if you're not on the day one list, you have a very little chance of winning any opportunity. So the question salespeople are asking, how do I get on the day one list? And this is where we cue marketing. But marketing has their own set of trust challenges. And one of the first ones is organic brand reach and engagement is in decline, pretty much across all social platforms. This basically means that when they're trying to get their posts out to their followers, the brand channel followers on platforms like LinkedIn, most of those followers are not seeing that content. And even if they do see that content, they're not engaging with that content, which presents a massive challenge for your marketers to cut through the noise. So, what these social platforms want you to do is invest in paid, which makes sense. So you want you to pay to get your content in front of your own audience followers. However, over the last few years, since Elon Musk took over Twitter and renamed it X, the cost per click on platforms like LinkedIn has gone up as much as 30%, according to FT.com. So paying to play has got more expensive, but only that, ad blockers are on the rise. So even if you do pay to put ads in front of people, quite often they'll get blocked because more people are getting annoyed with the adverts and starting to put ad blockers in place. And worse than that, attribution has become so difficult to measure. Gone are the days where you can put gated content, manage the conversion rates, follow up on the downloads with your demand center, and get a meeting. It's not linear anymore. And in fact, what's happening is the journey is very squiggly and unpredictable. People are consuming pieces of content when they want to, how they want to, in the media that they want to, too. And what this means is that anywhere between 70 and 80% of the B2B buyer journey is complete by the buyer themselves, and you have no idea as a vendor that they're doing it. So, this basically means you have to be everywhere all the time, but nobody's marketing budget runs to that. So, what do? We turn to our employees because our employees aren't penalized by the social media algorithms. And if we can get our employees sharing content on LinkedIn, that's an absolute win because they have trusted networks that'll get us higher conversion rates. But the problem is, marketing isn't the only one that's asking employees to share content on platforms like LinkedIn. Your talent teams are trying to do the same thing from an employer branding perspective. And the first thing that they're looking for is how to build a pipeline of candidates. But the problem is they're struggling to find qualified candidates. Their biggest challenge is not getting applications. They're getting thousands of applications, but they're not necessarily getting the ones that best fit the roles that they're trying to hire for. More than that, what they're doing instead is now increasing the screen time. So they're increasing the time and the number of interviews taken to qualify those candidates to make sure they're filling the roles with the right kind of candidates that best fit the role. And this increases the time to hire, which in turn creates a massive cost for the business. But more than that, your candidates expect an authentic employer brand experience. What they don't want to see is finely polished videos around that don't necessarily live up to the employer brand. What they want to see is more trusted, authentic content from those employees living up to the brand promises that you are promising your candidates. And 69% of those candidates will turn down a job if they feel that the company is not living up to their employer brand. Even if they're currently unemployed, they'll turn a job down. Now, the orchestrators of trust that sit across all of these is your executives, because often what we see in organizations is these different buckets of social trust are trying to be delivered separately. So your sales teams are orchestrating social selling, your marketing teams are trying to do advocacy programs to build brand awareness, your talent teams have their own employer branding teams trying to increase advocacy that way, and your exec teams are being managed by communications teams. And this is the key issue. Siloed social programs don't work. They need to be connected at always. So we've talked about how trust is a challenge for your sales teams, for your marketing teams, and also for your talent teams. But the people that hold this whole trust network together are your executives and how they behave on platforms like LinkedIn. Because your executives hold a lot of weight when it comes to activating employee behavior. Leadership, we already know, influences employee engagement. 20% of top ranked CEOs that were most active on LinkedIn scored 20 percentage points higher than average when it came to the employee engagement scores, according to a survey from Golin. But we see it in our own data. As executives and C-suite become more active on LinkedIn, we also see a correlating pattern between employees. So employees become more active, and that's because executives set the tone for the activity. It gives your employees permission to be active on LinkedIn. And companies that do this really well, you can see over time, Allianz, Apple, and Adobe, where the executives in orange have taken an uptick on LinkedIn. You can see senior leaders following suit, and so do employees. And you see this across these three organizations. But the same works the other way. We won't name and shame who these companies are, but we also see the C-suite going down. We see senior leaders going down as well. And we see employee behavior decline on LinkedIn too. So we know it influences both ways, but we also know that active leadership on LinkedIn influences buyers. 70% of B2B buyers feel more connected with a brand when their CEO is active on social media. And that's because the CEO presents the transparent tone and accessibility nature of social in a non-fearful way. And that also inspires your employees to follow suit. So the key here is connected trust. Social in silos doesn't work. When you connect the trust across your executives, your sales, marketing, and talent teams, it has a multiple effect on how you build an advocacy program, and it strengthens your brand across the entire company and around awareness. So, connected trust is the key competitive advantage. Running social silos, having sales running social selling, marketing doing their own brand awareness through advocacy, talent teams managing employer branding, and your exec comms team just managing executives. If they're disconnected, it'll show up on social media. So, the key here to building a competitive advantage is to connect the dots between your programs. And when you do this, it pays off, because buyers trust thought leadership from authorities within your company more than any other content, more than your marketing content. 73% of B2B buyers consider thought leadership way more trustworthy than marketing content. And more than that, buyers trust experts more than salespeople. Your customers will go check out your salespeople on LinkedIn. 49% of them will research them, and 88% of them expect them to act like a trusted advisor. They don't want to be sold to, they want to be educated and supported in their buyer journey. So essentially, employee trust equals employee engagement. Employee engagement increases employee advocacy, and advocacy drives business growth. And the kicker, your employees want to do this. In a research study from Hinge, 76% of employees said sharing on social helped them to keep up with industry trends. It also helped them to build their connections and their professional network. It helps them do their job. But the problem is they're confused of the different programs going on and the different tools internally. They're fearful of saying the wrong thing, so they have no education around what to say and what not to say, and they don't know where to start. And this is the same for executives and sales teams and employees that are given access to tools but don't know where to start. So, if you want to learn more about this, feel free to follow the Tribal Impact company page and join our community, where we'll constantly be bringing events to our community over the next 12 months until we have our next annual event. Thank you for watching.